Hi, everybody. It's Ryan with Pie Records, and I'm here with Chuck Coffey from Snappy Little Numbers. How you doing, Chuck?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good, good. We have a lot of mutual interests and friends. So I'm very happy to talk to you for the first time and get to know a little bit about what you do. And I'm sure people will find it of great interest. Do you want to start with
Well,
a
we'll
little?
see.
You want to start with a little introduction of what Snappy Little Numbers does?
Sure. So Snappy Little Numbers Quality Audio Recordings is it basically it's just a hobby record label that I started in 2011 after doing another label for a long time with a friend of mine called Not Bad Records. That it just kind of come to a good close, and with Snappy Little Numbers, it was just kind of a I was kind of figuring out where I was with music and my participation level after having played in bands for a long time, and it was kind of like, well, I still want to keep doing stuff, and I wasn't sure. I hadn't realized yet that I was a lifer at that point. But doing Snappy Little Numbers and having it grow to be what it's become, which is, I figured I put out a few records, whatever, and now, we've done nearly 100 releases in 10 years. It's part of the reason why I understand now that I'm a music lifer. So a lot of it for me is social, and it's about helping friends, and just uh, I know how to press records and how to work records a little bit. I'm not the best at anything, but it's one of those things where I don't know what other people know, and I just got people over the years that were like, we like what you do, can we be a part of it? And I just have kind of just kept going from there, and it's turned into something really fun, and I've made a lot of great friends and met a lot of cool people and heard a lot of awesome music and great stories, and I just it's I've been really lucky with it, I think.
So how how is it you've managed to connect so far and wide? Like what do you look for in a band that you're going to release?
So a lot of it comes from I think just having played in bands too. That's how I meet a lot of people playing in bands over the years, and um, yeah, I'm usually in a couple bands at any given time. But I've been playing in a band called Spells for the last 8 years, and we've been really lucky to have played a lot of great shows and done some touring and played festivals, and that has been a really good outlet for meeting people and connecting through music. And then also I've just kind of been the person around town. Like, every city has a scene and then a million sub scenes, and there's a lot of great stuff going on in Denver, and I'm just part of a small fraction of it, but that fraction I has supported um, very strongly for a long time, and I think that tends to lead to a lot of sustained relationships too. So as people start new bands or move on to other things, like, those relationships stay, and eventually might develop into doing another record with a band that might be new to some people, but I've known them for years.
Awesome. So what I don't want to say genre, but what is it that you are passionate about in a band that might want you to put them out?
So what I'm passionate about, I mean, I think, like you and anybody else that considers themselves a music fan, like, I love a band, and I love people that believe in what they're doing, and that can come in many shapes and sizes, but the for someone, I think it's really important for people to understand that um, people put a lot of effort into their bands and into their music, and you can tell who's doing it just because it's something to do, is they feel driven or motivated, and that's not necessarily some sort of like drive to make it to the top or to be like the best band in the world, but to be the best that they can be is really cool. And I think you can hear that in a lot of music. And a lot of what drew me to punk and why a lot of the stuff that I do is punk related is just you don't feel like you fit in with normal society or normal this or that. And the idea of subculture and counterculture is really important to me. And I think a lot of the music I'm drawn to and a lot of the people that I get along with have a similar feeling. So it's kind of it's almost familial, like you make a connection with the band, like, yeah, we're on the same side and we're all in this together. And just trying to be good people and have a little bit of fun while still also being like socially aware of the larger world. And especially now, I think there's a time where we're seeing a lot of bands realize that whether 10 people or 10 million people like what you're doing, you have a platform not only to share your passions musically, but also your beliefs and your drive to try and do better. And I've really enjoyed working with bands that feel that way and helping them with how they can participate more in the larger life, I guess.
There's you mentioned the family aspect of, and what really interests me is um how like DIY punk rock, the community, everybody seems to bump into each other at some point. It's large, but
Yeah.
not that large that you're not going to wind up meeting somebody in any given scene at any time. What uh what what does DIY ethic mean to you in the community?
So to me, it's really interesting. It's There's so many different levels, and there's so many different. I mean, there's so many different things in the world that have kind of been adopting, a DIY aesthetic. But to me, it's really, when you say do it yourself, there is a portion where I think it's important to be willing to take the responsibility to do something and to either make it or also not be afraid to like fail and let it sink. That's all part of DIY. And there's a shared aspect in it too, where it's like is the do it yourself, it's really more of like a DIO, like a do it ourselves kind of thing. To me, it's more like understanding that you have the willingness to do it yourself, but I'm not good at everything, but I'm good at some things, and other people are good at the things that I'm not good at. And it's just kind of this circle of people helping each other out. And I think that's why people get the bumps, is because you recognize that people, if they could do it all themselves, they would, and you appreciate that in them. So you want to help them, whether you're a bigger band or you're a bigger label and you want to shine a light on something, or like you have a cool show and it gives you a chance to expose people to more than just the catalog numbers and the 10 tracks on a record. You get to know like who people are, why they do what they do. And that's really what DIY means to me, is really you're doing it yourself, but you're doing it with others and you're doing it for others. Like, I don't just do the label or play in bands because I want certain things to happen. It's because I also want to see things happen for other people.
That's very interesting, and I think a lot of people doing independent music have the same feeling.
Mhm.
Um, Martin Winch introduced me to you, and he couldn't say enough good things from Green Noise Records, and
It's great. It's awesome.
it wanted me, like, he talked about some of the stuff he likes to distro,
Mhm.
and I'd like to know a little bit about some of the bands you really feel like lucky or just really stoked about working with.
Well, let's see here. I guess the blanket statement is I love everybody equally that I work with, and they're all my favorites. But but honestly, what you know, there's kind of different. There's kind of a few different ways to respond to that. I'll say I'm lucky that anybody wants to work with me at all, because who am I compared to the thousands of other people that are doing this? But really, the things where I feel lucky, the things where I really feel lucky is I've always kind of been I'm a homer. Like I'm a big, you'll look down the roster and you'll find out that 2 out of 3 bands are from Denver, and that's not an accident. Like I never set out to like try and be like a Discord or like an early lookout or something where you're documenting your own scene. But by default, that's kind of what happens because, I live in Denver, and, that's where I see most of the shows and meet most of my friends. So the bands I'm really stoked to work with on, aside from being friends, I'm stoked to see bands that are from my backyard that get attention elsewhere. So like I did a record for a band called Black Dots a couple years ago, and Razor Cake really picked up on them, and they got a lot of attention, and they had a good set at Fest before their record came out. And I get really excited when stuff like that is happening for those bands. There's another band from Denver called Lawsuit Models, and they're one of those bands that they're great people, and I've their band was good to start with, but as the years go by and they make more records, you can really chart the progress and how they've become better songwriters and better musicians, and more people hear their band and get excited, and I get excited about things like that. And then there's the flip side where I'll work with a band from like Foxhall Stacks from Washington DC, which they're all punk rock famous is what I call it, because they've all been in bands and done all these things like that. I was listening to their records when I was 17 or 18, and then fast forward all these years later, and they become like your friends and acquaintances, and they're asking you for advice on what to do with their record. And I'm like, well, you should be telling me what you want me to do, but here's what I think. And then and then with that, that definitely leads to a little bit more exposure for the label, which leads to more bands from outside of Colorado kind of finding me. And then I'll work with like a band that just did a single for a band called Gentlemen Rogues, and Gentlemen Rogues from Austin, Texas. They just had the coolest song in the world on Little Steven's Underground Garage, and just had a video premiere for their single, and they're really like picking up a lot of steam. And it turns out that I knew the singer Danny. Well, I didn't know him, but I saw his old band Jill play at my local club when I was like 19, but I didn't know him. I didn't know that there was any relation to that band until we met last year. And it's like just the little things like that, just little connections, and just kind of like I never stopped, like I never moved on. Or a lot of people I think feel pressure to grow up or get real, but what they really mean is get a real job and don't do fun stuff anymore. And I don't operate like that. And I'm lucky that I live in a world where you can still be in your 40s and do this stuff, and it's still fun. And honestly, if it's valid to just you, it's already worth it. But to see that it's still important to a lot of people, it's really heartwarming, and it really makes me happy that I never stopped doing it.
I can totally understand that, because growing up being like a super fan of music, and getting to meet those punk rock bands when I was a teenager in my 20s, and now I get to work with Sam from Down by Law,
Oh yeah.
putting out his surf band. And it's so weird because in 1994, I'm watching Sam on stage put on this great show, and it's kind of like what you were just saying, you know, you get to see these guys when you're young, and then you develop relationships with them, and then later on you're lucky enough to put out one of their records, you know, just by happenstance, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. And also then you realize the other connections, like, so with you're friends with Sam. I've played a couple shows. I played bass for a couple shows with Down by Law because another band I play in called Bad Year, our drummer is the drummer in Down by Law. And so I wound up meeting Dave and we pinched hit for a couple shows. And then the first time I saw Down by Law was the first time I saw the Bollweevils, who were one of my favorite bands then, who have since become like really great friends of ours. And Spells has done shows with them. And um, I did a little like benefit single a couple months ago, and Daryl was like a guest vocalist on it. And it's it's really weird, like how like all the webs and all the connections that happen over the years. It's also a fun thing to see, because I think when you're still kind of running in these circles, when you're older, you're really running into a lot of people that feel the same way that you always did about it. It's not just a passing phase or what you did when you were young. It's a lot about your values and how you see the world, and it just happens to be set to music.
Yeah, absolutely. I could pick my my life um is kind of like like biographically dictated by the music I was listening to at the time, what album came out, what year.
Yeah.
And I can remember where I was doing what I was doing and playing in what band when a record came out. And
Mhm.
I'm sure that applies to a lot of people, and that's what keeps people going in the scene.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it is. Yeah, that is really interesting, because I wonder, so you live in or near Philadelphia?
Yes.
Okay. So did you grow up there?
I grew up in a small town north of Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Um, but I went to school in Philly, and
Uh-huh.
now I work at NBC Sports Philly, and
Hmm.
I'm trying to build a business where I can pretty much sustain myself and do what I love doing, which is this.
Cool. That's great. So I hear Allentown, who was from, wasn't like Weston and Digger from Allentown? Weren't
Yes.
those like your local bands? I know
Yes.
what's up. I've been around.
Yes. Last 2 summers ago, I saw Digger open for Dave Smalley's band Don't Sleep.
Oh
And
yeah, that band's cool. Yeah,
and
Digger just, have they been together the whole time, or did they just start playing again?
no, actually one of the guitar players from Weston is in Digger now.
Okay.
And um Weston and my old band were around the same time.
Tell
So
me what your old band was though.
it was a punk rock band called Down Division. We weren't very big.
Okay.
Uh, I think maybe it would have worked out had we going on tour, but we kind of broke up after I graduated college, and
Sure.
it kind of got slow. But Weston was huge, like
Yeah.
uh, along with the Bouncing Souls, who spent a lot of time
Oh,
in
sure.
in Philly. When Weston came to town, like everybody was there.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, Weston. I saw Digger a few times, and even one of like having been playing in bands like forever. I think we even played with them. One of my old bands played with them like in Baltimore with 88 Fingers Louie. So like, yeah, like I think I think the 90s was a great time to get exposed to punk rock, because well, any time is a great time, but like the mid 90s was such a interesting cross section of pop punk and post hardcore and emo and ska and all this other stuff that um there's kind of something for every musical taste. And then at the turn of the century, when other things like, like weren't as in fashion anymore, and you saw like who was still into what, like kind of informed how you kept going, I guess.
Yeah. Speaking of 88 Fingers Louie, our old drummer Chris went to the Musicians Institute of Technology in LA
Hmm.
uh, for music, and obviously, and one of the guys from 88 Fingers Louie was there.
Hmm.
Now, anybody who's heard that band knows how technically superior they are.
Yeah.
they're just out there.
Yep.
So he used to bring me all their demos and stuff like that. Whenever we would meet up, and
Cool.
yeah, I was already a big fan, but when he said he was going to school with them, I was like, "Get me some demos." See what
Yeah,
they're
that's
gonna.
awesome.
But
But that's also cool too, because like that's part of and there's other music that have like these kind of communities too, but like that's where it brings you back to like what does DIY mean to you, and all that. Like DIY is having a friend that knows a band that, and they share demos, and it's not, it's that whole thing, like, you know the bands that I first was into were like, like Black Flag or Minor Threat, and you read the stories about, it's like you're playing shows with your buddies, you're taking your buddies on tour, you're putting out your friends' records, and it was all about like creating, it wasn't just I'm here, you need to help me make it to the top. It was how can we all do this together? And even though it's been romanticized, over the years, and like different people don't necessarily feel the same way about it. Like that's just still like what it means to me is like it's about sharing, and like the shared journey, and not just, it's awesome. Like I'm always happy when bands like break bigger and all this other stuff. That's great. But the ones that do it and still remember, who their friends are and how they got there, are the ones that tend to stick around for a long time, and even like weather, the greater trends.
yeah, yeah. So I see tons of vinyl on behind you.
Oh
Is
yeah.
I'm particularly fond of vinyl. I always have been my whole life.
Yeah,
But is that your preferred media to put
it
albums
is.
out?
It is my preference, although I should say, well, I have a lot of opinions about, the record industry, uh but money not being a factor, vinyl is the preferred formats. But I'm not anti-digital. Like I listen to tons of digital music. Um, as much as I listen to records on a record player, like I'll also, I mean, I have an MP3 library full of tens of thousands of songs. Like Snappy Little Numbers has a DJ arm, so I like, DJ events and weddings and stuff. So it's a lot. So I love all sorts of music and play all sorts of music, but vinyl is definitely the preference. But I think cassettes are cool. Uh, CDs reigned for a long time, and they were inexpensive and convenient. I For the longest time I was just like a CDs are dead, don't bother. But now that like pressing vinyl records and the cost as a consumer to buy vinyl has been skyrocketing to the point that I wonder if like CDs are going to be a thing again, because I've seen younger people back like kind of get back into CDs, because you can press or burn 50 CDs and still hand make your covers. Um, and people still can like toss it in their car or throw it on their CD drive, on their laptop or whatever. But, like cassettes are kind of cooler and or whatever, more kitschy. But, CDs I think are starting to kind of achieve the same effect for some people. And, I'm not in touch with what all the younger generations necessarily into, but I have been trying, especially during the pandemic, I've really enjoyed just being a fan and like not connected to any of it from like playing music or being a label, and just enjoying what people are doing without trying to figure out like how I might fit in to like participate. It's just been more like, I like what they're doing and that's great. And so it's been really interesting to see and hear and spend the time delving into, what the early 20 somethings are doing these days, and the interesting mixes of music that they've come up with now that there's been, 25 more years of punk and whatever experimental kind of music to combine, not to mention if anybody's into hip hop, soul, R&B, and like adding like even more like instrumentation or electronic elements.
So one thing I noticed that I didn't notice when I was young buying records is a lot of collaborations between labels to get bands that they believe in out to the world.
Sure.
And there's one in particular band that I'll mention is Tired Radio. We were a part of putting out their CD, but the vinyl was put out by 6 different labels. And when you hear it, you understand, okay, this isn't just 6 different labels pooling their money. This is 6 different labels that believe this record is good enough to get out, and they want to get it out and help.
Yeah.
Do you have any experience in that area?
Yeah, I've done a few co-releases, and like you say, and I've always been one that it's, I like working with other labels, and I mean, it depends on the release and what the band is looking for, but it's like you say, it's kind of like, more than just one or two people like think that it's a good record, and the pooling of the resources can be pragmatic, but it's also, again, it comes back to like kind of like that more like social, like familial kind of relationship, and that you become friends with these other labels, or you've been a fan of what they've done, and eventually you intersect with them because of this one band. And then I am always interested in learning how people do what they do, so working with another label, it just allows me an opportunity to see like, well, you do this and that and you've had success, so maybe I should try it. Or like, I think that maybe I haven't seen them do something that I do that might be helpful, and it's kind of like, you're trading your recipes, I suppose. And then when it comes to the record that you collaborate on, the only thing that's really going to do is benefit the record, because you're people that follow one label but don't know the other are going to get exposed to the other, and vice versa. And then the band's going to get to tap into 2 or 3, or the example you gave, 6 other labels, rosters and connections, and if there's any sort of following. So it makes a lot of sense from just exposure standpoint, I suppose.
Yeah, I was and with the product, Duda from Terramotor expressed,
which I saw your episode with him, because I just got hip to Terramotor like 3 months ago.
And they're rad, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And and I think it was because I just found out about the label that they did like a 7-inch with the label from Texas.
Otitis.
Huh?
Otitis Media.
Yeah, because I got the Thunderbeats record too, and I was like, oh, here's this cool like surfy garagey label that's like new to me, and that was part of my just being a fan and like seeking out other things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're great. They have like a fantastic roster. Excuse me. And the guy from Terramotor, he said what I was thinking subconsciously. the record, the vinyl, is more beautiful. That's his take on it. As a
Yeah,
musician, to have a physical copy in your hand and say, hey, we made this, and
it's
the
that.
art the artwork is larger than life. Um,
Yep. And like I'm still a tactile person. It's fun to go to a record store and flip through the bins, uh and yeah, I think as being, I started a label a long time ago just so that I wouldn't necessarily have to rely on other people if I wanted to put a record out. So, I played in bands first. And so that's why the way I kind of do the label is like a musician first. I like vinyl because that's what I want as a musician and also just as a music fan. So I totally get like, yeah, it the that's the best way to connect, and it makes it more than just, for better or worse, like music is, I suppose, more disposable these days with like streaming culture. And vinyl or a physical artifact like harkens back to that. It's like it's more than just, a background sound to pass your day. It's like an investment of like time and energy and effort and opinion and dissertation, and that all comes out like when you can present it in the physical package too.
yeah, some article I was reading the other day coined it. Now it may seem a little corny, but it did make sense. The phrase they coined was deep listening, like how that's a lost art where you just sit
Yeah.
and there's nothing else going on and you're paying attention.
Yep.
And I think for me it's made me more analytical because I'm listening for every little thing, and I think that state of mind changes people like us.
I think so. Yeah, I think so too. And we're definitely not the average music listener, or we're not the typical target market for things like that. And I understand that too, but it's still, I'm still glad that there's enough of us that is still a valid format that can still happen, so that you can do the deep listens and like really, like, yeah, like throw on a record and all you're doing is just, yeah, the deep listening or reading a lyric sheet or just like studying an album cover while you're listening to the record. Like that's very fun. Like that in itself is an activity. And it's a great primary activity, whereas music for a lot of people is a secondary activity.
It helps me with my anxiety, like um when people might resort to other methods.
Sure.
I put a record on, um and then I just sit there and listen, and maybe I'll put two or three on, and I'll drink coffee, a lot of coffee,
Hmm.
and then and then and then just listen, all different genres.
Hmm.
Um, but it is an experience that helps me, get out of my own head sometimes.
Yeah, totally. And I think, yeah, you're right. It can be a departure, like, and it's certainly a healthy one. Like, um, and some people experience that different ways, like getting lost in a book or whatever. But it's just when you're into it, like, how special that can be.
Yeah, yeah. I want to talk to you a little bit about something outside of the record label part and the other things you do. Like you mentioned, you DJ things, do you put
Hmm.
on shows? What are some of the other things you do to be involved in getting music heard?
So, primary, like first and foremost, I've alluded to it before, but I'm a music fan. Like, and we all are, but and again, where it comes back to kind of like the community thing. It's a little different with the pandemic and not being able to hang around people as much, but definitely, like, think about so however many tours I've done or whatever, like, and everybody's always like, oh, have you heard this yet? And it's always like the sharing of the music between your friends when you're in the van, or so the DJing is that's when I do like a, like a specific event or wedding, that's probably more like, pop top 40 or whatever kind of stuff. But then there's the times that I'll DJ like art installations, or like events at like breweries or something, where you're, again, like, I'm playing what like I want to listen to and what I want to expose people to. And even then it's like it's fun to get the request, because the one person in the crowd recognizes that deep track that you just played, and they're like, oh, you know what that is, do you have this? And then like you have that whole interaction again with a stranger. And and that just spreads to when you're hanging out with friends, or you're out in public checking stuff out. And it goes back to like how it's fun to hang out in record stores, and the staff can say what they're into, but you can always hip them to something too. And it's not that that happens as much as it used to when I used to go to 3 shows a week and go record shopping once a week or whatever. But that's just kind of, I feel like I'm a big cheerleader, and a big I try and instill a lot of confidence in any of my friends that are interested in music or that play or perform music, to just it's, as long as you're getting something out of it, as long as you have a connection to it, or you feel some sort of drive, like, it already has merit. Don't worry about who else likes it or whatever else. Like, you just do what you do, and be confident that if you feel something, that it has merit. And being a music fan, that's just kind of like the general attitude of, I usually actually, a lot of times on like road trips or tours or whatever, like sometimes I'm stoked because I want to show somebody a record I'm really into, but more often than not, like, I defer. Like, I want somebody else to pick the music because I want to hear new things or hear what somebody else is into. And then that in turn exposes me to more things. And then when it's maybe my turn to share the music in a setting, like, it'll be something new that I just got turned on to because of, hearing it from my buddy or my bandmate or whatever. And just that kind of general disposition is kind of how I participate in music. And it kind of, that's also going to see shows and going out to shows, which, obviously hasn't been as much of a thing in the last year. And I don't go to as many shows as I did once when I, was younger. But it's just kind of like that general openness and interest in sharing with others, but being interested in hearing what others want to share with you too.
Yeah, that's a great philosophy. And I want to kind of turn it a little bit. You said pre-interview that you like to ask questions. What might you want to ask me that maybe people don't know?
Well, so I want to know more about, well, actually I have a lot of questions for you. I want to know, tell me more about Pi Records and how that got started, and like your initial motivations were, and what has happened that has made you glad you did it, and like maybe been a pleasant surprise that you didn't expect.
Well, first, we made up the label name as a way to seem a little bit more relevant. When we were in our band, we would stick the Pi Records logo on it in like 95. And the joke of it was the drummer at the time, Bill, was doing the taps. We had a little ska part in one of our songs, and he said the trick is you have to hit it at Pi. And I never got the joke. He thought it was funny.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a drummer thing I don't know about. But I kind of took that and changed it around and just called it Pure Idiot, because we're having this radio show called Pure Idiot Radio coming out.
Okay.
So what happened was I went away to college and was very heavily into the music scene. And then I went home afterwards and started working in television, and kind of got removed for that for quite some time, had kids, and you know how that might seem all encompassing. You know, there's not a lot of time for much else.
Yeah.
So when my kids got older, I found them being less and less dependent on me, which freed up a lot of time. And about 3.5 years ago, my mother passed away. She,
Sorry.
thank you. Um, and it just changed my life. There was a lot of anger and issues like why didn't she do more to take care of herself, that kind of thing.
Sure.
But I found that it was the motivation to put me back on track with my roots in the music. And I just started reaching out to people. I wasn't sure of what I wanted to do. So I started out with a record store on Discogs. And I did that for a while. Then I started reaching out to bands and saying, hey, we'll do these promo videos for you if you send a couple copies for our store. And my wife Jen does those, and the bands and labels seem to love it, and I meet a lot of great people that way, and I found that's been the most rewarding. uh it's not as much about a business, and it's more about doing a thing, you know.
Oh,
um
for sure.
it would be nice if I could quit my job and do this. That way I could do 3 or 4 times as much as what I do.
Yeah.
And it's more of a thing to keep me from getting inside my head. I do as much as I do because if I just sit around, I'll start thinking bad thoughts, you know, like if I'm sedentary. So the
Yeah.
next step was to put out a record. I always wanted to put out a record, and I almost put out one that kind of fell through. So I said, well, maybe this isn't going to happen.
Mhm.
Um, and then I kind of by accident stumbled onto Sam's band. Um, I put some of his CDs in our store, and then when he put out his new EP, it was only digital. So I said, "Hey, do you want to? Or do you have this on vinyl? Where can I buy it?" And he said, "We don't have one." And I said, "Well,
Mhm.
I think I can do this. You know, I'll put it out." Because
Yeah.
I really love the band, and I'm really a fan of his in Down by
Yeah.
Law, and that wasn't enough. So I find I find myself every time I get to one step, there's another idea. So then the radio thing
Yeah.
came. Now, growing up, my dad was a DJ, oldies and top 40.
Yeah.
My mom and dad owned a radio station. So I kind of wanted to forge my own path. So I didn't get involved with their radio station, but it was kind of
Mhm.
always something I wanted to do. And had I worked with them, I wouldn't have been able to play the music that I wanted to hear, or that
Sure.
I thought people would enjoy. And now it's just kind of like that's the
Cool.
next step. And
Yeah.
I found I thought maybe reaching out to people would be awkward, but I wanted to get out of my comfort zone. Uh, and I found the response was overwhelming. And we're working on our first show now. People are very
That's
great.
awesome.
They're gracious with their time. And I think that's the most rewarding thing for me is um, the openness to what I'm doing. And if you're honest about what you're doing, uh, people will gravitate towards you.
That's true. And it's always tough to, like, that can be hard to remember when, when you say getting out of your comfort zone. And that's, I mean, the only way that you get better at anything is, trying harder, trying different ways. And that I'm so glad that you had that experience of, reaching out and getting positive responses, because yeah, that the initial leaps and into things, especially when it comes to like creative endeavors, can be so scary. But then when you realize, it's like you say, if you're honest about it and your intentions are honest, people get that pretty quickly, and they want to help you or be a part of it, if you're really like being true about your intentions.
And I see that from a lot of labels, independent labels who seem small, but their influence is spread. Like, uh, I had just recently met Noah from Otitis, but everybody knows him. He's got tons of releases, and it's so wonderful to meet new people and uh, just realize that more people have stuff in common with me than I realized. It's not.
Yep.
I'm not alone in this, and that,
Oh,
being a
big
punk
time.
rocker, you can sometimes feel like you're on the outside, but it also
Oh
feels,
yeah,
it also feels good when there's people, like-minded people.
absolutely. Yeah, that's great. So the other thing I wanted to ask you is, so so you work in sports television, is that right? Like
Yeah,
that's your primary day job?
yeah.
So how did that come about? Like, did you, like, was that your vocation out of college? Like you went to school for like journalism or television production or something, or?
Um, I went to the Art Institute of Philadelphia.
Mhm.
I was originally going to move to LA and go for music production, and my girlfriend at the time suggested I go to Philly with her,
Mhm.
and we lived together. I don't recommend that. uh, um, but I originally went for audio production, and TV was kind of like a side. It was just part of the curriculum.
Yeah,
Um, and then I found out, oh my God, all the math involved with radio and audio theory. Even though I played music my whole life, it's just that part of it just didn't click with me, like recording and things like
sure.
that.
Yeah,
I wasn't a very technical person. I was a music person,
yeah,
but when it came to
that makes
yeah,
total sense. Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
so by default, I was kind of like, now what? And a couple of semesters in, I had my first TV class, and I went to the labs and edited and shot, and I said, well, I kind of really like this. So I ended up getting out of college and working at Walmart, and my uncle would drive me to work. And I was so defeated because I sent resumes everywhere, and I was working at this job, and I was like, felt like such a loser because I just come out of being in a band, having internships, going to labs every day, at my own job, living on my own.
yeah,
And and now I'm working at Walmart, living with my parents again. And this one TV station right up the street from where I lived called me, and they said, what is your goal? And I said, well, to be honest with you, I enjoyed technical directing in college the most. So
mm,
the manager laughed, and she said, well, we already have a technical director. She said, where do you see yourself in a year? I said, technical directing your show. In a year, I was directing and technical directing. Um, so I met my goal, only because of my tenacity and bugging the hell out of the director to show me, and
sure.
that's kind of the path I've been on ever since.
Okay, cool. And so the sports thing, was that were you interested in sports before, or is that just like that's just where things led?
Um, it's to me, it's work. Like, the work is the same no matter what format.
What the Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's sports or like
Yeah,
drama, it's the
yeah.
same.
Uh,
Okay.
I come mostly from a news background, but I've done morning shows
Okay.
and good shows and bad shows, and and sports is pretty much not my thing. Like
Yeah.
I love the Sixers and I love the Flyers.
Okay.
But I'm not a big baseball or football fan. It's a big football town.
Yeah.
But it's the work and the people. I've been there for quite a while now, and I think it amplified my interest in hockey a little bit more. I used to
Sure.
go in the '90s. I used to go to see the Flyers a lot, but now they're in our building where we work, so I can, not now, but before quarantine, we could walk across the hall and go see the Flyers play on the ice, like
Sure.
on that level, and so that was kind of
Cool.
a cool experience. I'm not a real big sports fan, but
Mhm.
I've come to respect the medium, uh, the,
Sure.
the pre and post game shows,
Mhm.
um, and just getting to listen to the wealth of knowledge these people have. And
Cool. So when I'm watching the Sixers on my NBA League Pass and I see their halftime show, like did you work on that?
yep, yep.
Okay.
Matter of fact, yesterday we just did one. Yep.
All right. Interesting. Yeah, that's I wouldn't say like I'm not a huge sports nut, but I like sports and you know kind of follow basketball and whatever, but it's fun. It seems it's one of those things where I think when you're into punk at first, like it's like a pretty anti-sports thing, and then anybody that's still into it when they're older, they're like, yeah, but yeah, I guess sports are okay because you're so far removed from having to endure like the the jock mentality or like any of like the bullies or any of like the as much as like the high school hierarchy that can come from like sports interests, like you come back around to appreciating just like if you enjoy the game or whatever a game is,
Yeah.
like whatever you dig about it.
Yeah, totally. It's not it wasn't something I even thought about. I worked for the parent company, which is Comcast,
Mhm.
previously, and then I went into a local news NBC station, and NBC was bought by Comcast.
Right.
So I don't want to get into all the
There, yeah, there. I was gonna say we could do 3 shows about media and the
yeah.
economics of sport and
Yeah, but long story short, my old boss from Comcast reached out to me, and then I went back
ah,
because the news business is very small now.
sure, sure. Yeah, I have a friend that's a reporter, and it sounds like a very interesting line of work.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or talk about or promote?
Let's see here. Well, I should say today is the release day of the new album by a band called State Drugs from Denver that I co-released with Ashtray Monument, which is a label from Buffalo, New York. So when you talk about co-releasing, um, we teamed up for that one, and it's a great album, and it's one of those things where I already like the band. It's the second time I've worked with the band, but again, it's like, man, like I listen to the record so much and it just keeps getting better and better. And that's always the mark of a great record to me. Um, so I'd say, so that's the latest. I think I told you I had to I bumped our interview the other day because my digital distributor erased like 12 of our titles from the catalog. So I have to figure out how to get all that stuff back up so people can find whoever they want on the streaming services. And that is insanely frustrating, but I promise I'm working hard to fix it. And it's not because I'm dumb. Somebody else did it, not me.
There's there's a thing called TuneCore. Have you heard of TuneCore?
Yep.
Um,
It's a similar, it's a, so the, it's who I'm with that does the job of TuneCore. They, something with their database or whatever, screwed
uh,
my stuff up.
that's messed up, dude.
Yeah. But are you with TuneCore with that record you did?
I no, same has that on Bandcamp, the digital version. So
Yep.
I didn't want to compete with that. So
Sure.
I just handled the physical copies.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many different ways you can do that with whoever has control of digital versus physical, and it's a whole it's a whole crazy world out there. And I can do digital and physical, and it's usually whatever the artist needs or prefers when it comes to the responsibility of who handles what. But yeah, it was very frustrating for me to find out that somebody made a mistake that affected the bands that I work with. That was very upsetting.
Yeah, especially if you have I've gone on to Apple Music. I listen to a lot of digital music in my car.
Sure.
And sometimes I'll add stuff to my library and I'll come back 3 months later and it's not available. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what the hell's going on? Like it's showing up in my library, but I can't play it. And that's I think kind of what's going on with you right now.
Yeah. So I mean, hopefully that gets sorted. But the other thing too is, while I want everybody to be able to access the music where they want to access it, it's also, all the band camps and the web stores and the band websites, they all work. They always work, and you can always access their music directly. And that's always going to be the best thing for the artists too, is to go buy their record, or pitch them some money on Bandcamp if you want the digital version. And I'm not anti streaming. I have a lot of opinions and theories about why things are the way they are, but at the end of the day, people just want their music to be heard, and I want to enable that.
It's a good philosophy.
Yeah.
A lot of good philosophies coming from you, Chuck.
Yeah, I have a lot of armchair philosophies, but like at the end of the day, I'm just I'm so lucky. Like, I have a great life. Wife and I are super happy. She works for a shop that her parents own, so they have an independent business. I'm mostly self-employed, and music has brought a lot of good stuff to our lives, and it's still it's always going to be a big part of my life. And as time goes on, there's just more ways that it's brought new opportunities and new ways to share with other people. And I couldn't have asked for more. When my goal was to play a show when I first learned how to play music, I was like, really awesome to be in a band and play a show
at a fire hall, right?
So yeah, wait, yeah, totally, yeah, yeah, and here we are. Like, I'm sure similar thoughts, similar ideas of what might be nice, and it's really encouraging to see and meet new people, or hang out with friends that have been around a long time. And it's a constant exceeding of the expectations, so long as your expectations were realistic. Or I'm kind of a low or no expectations kind of person, so I can always be pleasantly surprised. And yeah, I'm happy to say that I've been very pleasantly surprised by the musical path in life.
Awesome. Before we go, I want people to know where they can find you, find the music you put out.
Sure.
What platforms are you on, and how can people connect with you?
Sure. So the easiest way to remember is snappylittlenumbers.com. And that will take you to where you have a choice of if you want to go to the label branch or the DJ branch, or I just started doing a studio, a little basement studio. But even if you just Google Snappy Little Numbers, the label is usually what comes up primarily, because that's how it's the name has become best known. So yeah, snappylittlenumbers.com gets you anywhere else you need to go, and gets you a link to our web store if you want to buy the vinyl. We're on Bandcamp, so snappylittlenumbers.bandcamp.com. All the stuff is up there digitally, and I think we're on all the social media. Although I'm not the greatest at doing that. I try and stay pretty steady with it. So I feel like anybody that wants to find us can find us. And in the meantime, I'll keep learning about how to get in front of more people so that more of our bands get heard.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chuck. It was really a pleasure to talk with you and get your insight on the community, and I really admire a lot of the things that you say and can connect with what you've said. So I want to thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Ryan. It's been awesome. I really, like I told you pre-interview, I really enjoy doing these kinds of things, just because, like we're connected now. We were peripherally connected, and now we're friends, and we're gonna be similarly linked for a while. I'm gonna go order Sam's record from you when I wrap up some other things today. And if you ever need or want anything from me, just let me know. But I'd love to stay in touch, and love to probably ask you even more questions about what you do, and support the work that you're doing. And I just really appreciate your time and your interest and your effort.
Very, very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
So, hey, yeah, you too. So okay, I guess show's over now, right? So now